Welcome back to the Let's Talk Baseball podcast. I'm your host, Michael Herrera, joined by my good friend and coach, Jacob Payne. Today, we are finishing the power rankings where we left off last. Of course, we went from the Guardians at 11 to the Cardinals at 10 to the Blue Jays at 9, the Mariners at 8, and the Atlanta Braves at 7. And we're going to be finishing, hopefully, with the cream of the crop, the teams who, in our opinions, are the best teams in baseball. Before we get into that, Jacob, how you been doing, man?
Doing good, doing good. Excited to talk about some of the best that baseball's got to offer in these next few teams. So I'm very excited about that.
Let's get into it. And a team that we've talked about a lot, whether it's just the NL West in general, or it is this team, in the movies they made. Coming in at number 6, the San Diego Founding Fathers, and we've mentioned it quite a bit in our previous episodes. But they've had a big offseason, and it's been kind of a scary point to talk about from not as a Dodger fan too, just because we're usually being able to easily run the West, and we might not be able to do that anymore because the Padres might be now the big bad wolf coming out here and just trying because they did lose a lot of guys, which of course the additions make it seem not so bad. Lose guys like Jorge Alfaro, Josh Bell, Will Myers, Jurickson Profar. He signed with the Rockies a couple days ago. Brandon Drury, Pierce Johnson, and of course Mike Clevinger. But they added, obviously we talked about this, they added the X-Man Xander Bogaerts came over. Matt Carpenter, Nelson Cruz have some veterans. Seth Lugo, Michael Waka, Alfonso Rivas, Ruggiero Odor, Brent Honeywell all on minor league deals. And the biggest move of the offseason, not really the offseason because it's happening 20 games in, is them finally getting the return of Fernando Tatis back. And when that happens, this lineup is going to go. Jacob, you're telling me your 1 through 5 in that lineup is Tatis, Machado, Soto, Bogarts, and Cronenworth. I just want to like picture that in my head. Tatis, Soto, Bogarts, Machado, and Cronenworth. And you could literally flip flop them around in those top 5 spots. And then they do great. So I don't know, man. What do you want to see from this team?
I'll be honest, Michael. I don't want to see anything from this team. As a Dodgers fan, I don't want to see this squad at all perform. I'll be honest. Um, but that being said, they have done what people have been wanting the Padres to do for a while. These past few years, the Padres have been wanting to be competitive and wanting to take the NL West. And for the longest time, they just get spanked by the likes of the Dodgers and the Giants when they're feeling good. Um, and it's been that way for the longest time. The last couple of years we've been bringing up the idea of the Padres Dodgers rivalry, and for the longest time it hasn't even been a rivalry because the Dodgers have absolutely owned the Padres. That's how it's been for the longest time now. But we are seeing the tides change. Um, to say the least. I mean, to be fair, the Dodgers did own the Padres in the regular season last season as well. That there's no doubt about that. But the Padres came in hungry and ready to embarrass the Dodgers in the divisional series, and damn did they do that. It wasn't even a competitive series, Michael. Let's be honest. They absolutely stomped us out. And that's putting it lightly. It was not close. Um, the Dodgers just did not show up to play. Not to take anything away from the Padres because they played stellar. But the Padres just or the Dodgers just simply didn't want to um compete for that DS. So that should give the Padres a lot of momentum going into this season, knowing that they can and that they want to beat the Dodgers. Um, and I think that's where a lot of this drive comes from the Padres. I think a lot of their drive is we can beat the Dodgers. we can and we will beat the Dodgers. And I think that's part of what drives them, right? So let's get into this roster, man. First of all, I thought a big issue was that they were dropping starting pitchers. You know, they were losing a lot of that starting pitcher depth. Um, but some of these offseason moves have been targeted at filling that depth, right? We got Nick Martinez, who can slot in as a rotation guy if you really need him. I think he's better off in the bullpen, but that is what it is. Seth Lugo, I think same thing. Um, good piece. You could probably use in the rotation. You'd probably rather use him as a long reliever. But a great piece. Michael Waka, definitely a good starting piece there. Probably going to be competing with Ryan Weathers in that for that fifth spot. But then if you look, they made some another great addition in Robert Suarez in the bullpen. I mean, if you look at the guys they have in the bullpen, you got Josh Hader, Robert Suarez, Luis Garcia, Tim Hill, Drew Pomeranz. I mean, Nabil Chrismat, Jose Castillo. Like they've got. I don't know where it came from because it felt like the Padres have had a pretty crappy bullpen for the past few years, but all of a sudden, like you blink and they've got one of the best bullpens in the league. On paper, you know, I mean, we'll see how they will perform in the regular season, but on paper, that's arguably one of the better bullpens we're gonna see in this entire ball game. And that was one of their big issues, I thought. Looking at this roster, you think the issue's not going to be with the bats. It's got to be with the pitching. But you look at this pitching, and they've done their job. They've filled their holes. They've really targeted their pitching, and they've filled their holes. Um. So and going off, you got some other um good additions in um obviously Matt Carpenter, Nelson Cruz, um, Alfonso Rivas, Rund Odor, a lot of depth pieces, which is what they needed. They needed to add depth to their pieces. In fact, their depth is still not as as deep as you want to see. They got two catchers, okay. They got two second basemen. I mean, obviously you can convert a shortstop or third base to second base. Um, but right now, all they have listed in second base is Ha-Seong Kim and Jake Cronenworth, which if one of them has to play shortstop and the other one's injured, we might run into some problems. But obviously, the addition of Xander Bogaerts there is wonderful because you can have Xander Bogaerts at short. Honestly, you could probably slot him into second base if you really wanted to, um, and deal with that. I don't like the depth that they have in the outfield because I feel like it's a little weak. Um, I guess for some reason they have a lot of people listed in the right field and not a lot of people listed in the left field. That's why I thought that was an issue, but maybe not so much. But all in all, this Padres roster is getting better and better by the year, and that scares me as a Dodger fan because they have been powering up, and we thought we saw a sick roster with the addition of Juan Soto and Josh Hader on the Padres last year, and it's scary to me that they've only gotten better this offseason. And with the addition of Fernando Tatis Jr., I can only hope that as a Dodgers fan, I can only hope that they somehow collapse mid-season. But as a baseball fan, this will be one of the biggest power moves we should be seeing this season. And I'll be honest, the only reason they're at six right now, in my opinion, is because we have yet to see the Padres really compete in a 162 game season. They've shown that they could do it in the playoffs, but they barely made those playoffs. Let's be honest, they barely made it by the skin of their teeth. They showed up when it made playoffs, but they barely made it. So we have to see these Padres be a convincing team in a season, a 162 game season, before we can really rank them higher than some of these other teams.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And going to that pitching, I mean, we've talked about it previously when they did extend Darvish and bring in Waka. Their Fangraphs expectations right now, the only pitcher who has a not sub 4 ERA is Michael Waka. Everyone else is in that rotation. The highest is 398, and it goes as low as 330. And they're just gonna keep getting better. Obviously, Joe Musgrove's gone for a month, but he's had great bullpens. I expect him to be genuinely back by the second week of baseball starting. And obviously, coming off of a PED suspension, I know there was a whole debacle with Tatis and what really happened, but I mean, he's still Tatis, and a lot of people are like, okay, he's still gonna be he's the same person, the same player. I know I've made a little joke about that, but oh no, he's still expected to have 36 home runs, a 274 average, a 356 on base, and a 569 slugging. So I don't think that's gonna affect him that much. He's obviously still got the swagger and the attitude in that clubhouse. I think that's a lot what they have in that clubhouse. They have a lot of swag in that clubhouse, and a lot of attitude. I feel like that's gonna build up, and that's what's going to carry them. And I think these veteran additions, Jacob, are kind of sneaky. Nelson Cruz, who's expected to hit 13 home runs, had that kind of bounce back year from last year with the Nationals, and Carpenter, who's expected to hit 15 runs. These veterans might actually be really good for them, especially for guys that are going to come up and try to have the spotlight. And by come up, I mean one of the main people or the prospects is Luis Campusano, who is listed as their backup catcher right now. But I really hope he gets some time because I've seen his stats in the minors and I love him. And don't get me wrong, Austin Nola, you're a great dude, but your catcher is one of your weakest positions right now. And Trent Grisham, a big question of this season and a huge star in spring training. He has been hitting, Jacob, which makes me so concerned as a Dodger fan. His expected numbers, of course, are not where you'd want them, but they are a huge step up from last year. From a 164 average, 284 on base, and 341 of last year, he's expected to have a 223, 317, and 394, which is obviously way better numbers than last year. And if you can get that a little bit of improvement from Trent Grisham and everybody else on this roster doing something better than they did last year, they can easily take the spot in the NL West, which is just horrifying. Because that's just amazing. Like we said, this rivalry hasn't been a rivalry fully until last year, but it's going to be amazing when it fully comes together, and especially in this postseason. Since we talked about them, we're not going to really go in a full depth already. Their over-under is at 93.5. They won, I think it was 88 or something last year. Let me pull it up real quick. They won a total of 89 games last year. And I'm gonna go with the over because this team, if everything goes right for them, can just do whatever they want. And I'm not saying that like they're gonna win the World Series, but that's the potential that they have. Like their ceiling, if I'm talking about a ceiling for this team, like a World Series championship is like what I'm going for, and that's reasonable. And a couple years ago, we weren't be able to say that. At the end of to when the playoffs are starting, I don't think you were able to say that either because you still had the big bad Dodgers, and the Padres weren't the strongest team, but they shoved, and it really depends. Also, again, if the Padres shove and they don't in the postseason, that can happen too. But it just matter if they have that momentum going in, and I think they are because they have the swagger and the attitude and the ability to do it. We're gonna be seeing a fun rivalry in the NL West this year.
I, on the other hand, am going to take the under. And here's why. I don't think it's going to be far under. I think it's probably going to be very, very low 90s, maybe high 80s. And here's why. There were plenty of times last season, even after the trade deadline when they made their huge additions, where the Padres did not show up, where their offense did not show up. I'll be honest, even in the playoffs, a lot of those games, they won because of their pitching. They won because their pitchers kept the opponent down and never let them back up. The offense would go missing sometimes. And that was a problem with the Dodgers. The same thing, right? We've seen this before. For a roster like this to go missing at the plate is a damn shame. Especially if we're talking about this season with the top five probably arguably being one of the best top fives that this baseball game has to field. and being led by a grizzled veteran in Manny Machado. He has grown so much and is such. It's great to really see him grow and be a leader now. I don't know if you remember the times, when he was a very immature young man, um, and very arrogant, very outspoken, which I mean, hey, he was a young kid coming out playing baseball. Sometimes you kind of need to be like that. Um, and he's really grown up, and I feel like he's really brought this team together. I feel like he's almost like that secondary coach where if you need some advice, if you need to look somewhere for some support, he's your man. He's that guy. Um, and so for that offense to go missing, that's tough, man. That's brutal. That's unacceptable. I mean, somebody's got to be hitting the ball. Somebody in that lineup's got to be producing at any given moment. And if everybody goes missing, that's a damn shame. And we saw that all too much last year. In fact, that's one of the reasons they almost missed out on playoffs. Um, so now, granted, Juan Soto's had some time to find himself within the Padres camp, and so there really is no excuses going out this season and being missing. There's a little bit of an excuse, obviously, being able to adapt to a new team, a new format. I mean, new everything, new system. You gotta make a million adjustments, and so seeing him not perform at his highest right after the deadline is not at all a surprise. If anything, it's what you expect, but going into this season, he's got no excuses. He's got to perform. Him, Machado, Xander Bogaerts, coming in at the beginning of the season, he'll have a little bit of an adjustment period, but he's really got to get going. They've got to step it up. They've got to put up these big numbers. They cannot just rely on pitching because obviously pitching's going to be there. But if we get an injury or two to that rotation, it's going to knock it down a notch. It's not going to knock it off completely because we talked about their depth and their possibility of all their rotation. I think they have listed 10 starters. Now obviously some of those are going to be long relievers, but they have 10 starters, so they have the potential to fill. But it is still going to knock them down a peg if Yu Darvish or Musgrove goes out for longer, or Snell goes out, or Ryan Weathers goes out. That's going to knock them down a peg. That it just is. So they have to be firing on all cylinders, and I'm not convinced that they are going to be able to during the 162 game season.
Wow. Okay. I like where you're thinking. And I like what you're thinking. For now, we're on our top 5. Congrats to those who are in the top 10. The top 5, congrats to you, because you're literally the cream of the crop, and who we think are the best teams in baseball, the most likeliest to go out there and win the World Series championship. And again, we talked about how these next few these 4, 5, 6, 7 might be a little bit debatable. They're very debatable, and this one is a lot. And it took me a while to finally land on this. It took us a while. Number 5, the Philadelphia Phillies. That's right, they are above the Atlanta Braves, and not just because they have in our opinions, they have an on paper better team, and they had an on paper better offseason. Now, of course, the Braves is just one of the best franchises when it comes to developing players and coming out here and just signing the most ridiculous contracts and spending the least amount of money and having some of the most epic star power we've seen. But the Phillies, they were like, okay, we're gonna spend money, and they did. They said, give me Trey Turner. They said, give me Taijuan Walker to help that rotation, and then they fixed up that bullpen with the likes of Gregory Soto, Craig Kimbrell, Matt Strahm. We know Craig Kimbrell far too well, unfortunately, hoping that he can help. They can help them out. And some depth pieces to add to that lineup in Cody Clement, Jake Cave, and Josh Harrison. But Jacob, I like this team. I even still like this team a lot. As we mentioned last episode, unfortunately, the departure of Rhys Hoskins. Hopefully, he gets better over time. That he can have that full nice final season in Philly, because I think he was a very underrated part of that lineup than more people realize. Because he still has that bat, and he did amazing in that postseason. Like, he was a postseason hero for them. But so you still got a lineup of Kyle Schwarber, Brandon Marsh, Nicholas Castellanos, Trey Turner, Alec Bohm, JT Realmuto, Bryson Stott, Bryce Harper, and Derek Hall. Derek Hall is assuming the first base position right now. He is expected to have some pretty good stats. 21 homers, just your average little from a first breakout season rookie. But this team, man, I just keep looking and looking, and I just keep liking and liking. I just think there's not a lot of places where you can go wrong with this team. Alec Bohm was, remember that? Remember at the beginning of the season where he's like, I effing hate this place, and then he effing loved this place. Became a star for this team, had a breakout year, hoping to continue that success. Bryson Stott, same thing, struggled, and then he came out and showed up. And then what did they do to this lineup that was the National League Championship last year? Added one of the best contact hitters and in Captain America. They added Captain America to this lineup, Jacob. I just don't see nothing short of second place. Like third place in my mind for this team doesn't exist because of the way they've set up this season. And there's just no holes. I'm looking at this roster, Jacob, and there's no holes anywhere. So I need you to tell me what you think, because I love this team.
Okay, well, first of all, I'm probably gonna get some hate for this, okay? But I'm gonna say right now, Craig Kimbrell isn't as bad as everybody thinks he is. Okay? I know I'm gonna get chased out of town with pitchforks and torches, but for the longest time I stood by Craig Kimbrell. Now I know he didn't perform nearly as well as anybody thought he was, but let me paint you a picture, right? Okay, Michael, you're a closer, right? You haven't been having some great seasons, and it's time for you to bounce back. But it's time for you to bounce back on one of the most covered teams in all of baseball, with one of the most diehard fans in baseball. They love you or they hate you, depending on how well you do, how well you perform, right? So you start off the season a little iffy, which, hey, everybody's going to start out the season a little iffy in a new system. We talked about that adjustment period, right? But then it doesn't get better too much, right? And again, it's not too long. There was a point where I was like, okay, he's not performing, but he's still got time. He's still got time to adjust, figure it out in the regular season, so you're ready for the postseason. But Dodger fans, they really like to see now results, right? They like to see now results. And so when he doesn't start off well, the fans really start to not like him, right? And it's this cycle. It's this cycle of being in your head. You're in your head because you aren't performing, and everybody dislikes you, so you're in your head even more. And then you keep not performing, and then everybody dislikes you even more. It's this regressive cycle, right? And it's tough to be in that sort of spotlight that Craig Kimbrell was put in, because he needed to build himself up, and it was really hard to do that when he kept getting put in positions where he couldn't build himself up and he would give up runs. Now I'm not saying that's an out, but I'm just saying I think that's what happened. I think he got in his head too much, and then it was just this bad cycle that he was in, right? Dave Roberts kept wanting to put him in so he can make up for himself and turn the story and let everybody get behind him, and then he wouldn't be able to do it, and then it made things worse, right? And then there was a point where it doesn't matter what you do, people are still not going to like you for what you have already done, right? So that's where I just had a piece to say on Craig Kimbrell, because I feel like he's gotten a lot of hate, and I feel like it's a tad unwarranted. I know he really, really did not perform. In fact, he was one of our worst pitchers in the entire bullpen. But I think there's a reason for that, and that's what I think is behind that. So I think on the Phillies, he can really make a difference because he's got a chip on his shoulder for how bad he performed. Not even to like stick it to anybody else, but to like prove to himself that he is still a dominant pitcher. He's got that chip on his shoulder, which I think is one of the most powerful things that you can have, is your own self fighting you, saying, yeah, I could do better. What I thought about the Phillies, right? They made some great additions. I thought their biggest loss was the bullpen. If you look at the guys they lost, Zach Eflin, they lost a starting pitcher and Noah Syndergaard. Corey Knebel, I know he didn't really perform on the Phillies as well, but we knew Corey Knebel when he found his stuff on the Dodgers, he was nasty. He was unhittable. Um, uh, David Robertson, that dude was a man for the Phillies. He churned out some big innings during the postseason. Very, very influential. So I thought that was a big hit. But my goodness, did they make some additions? Um, like we talked about, Trey Turner, Captain America. That dude had, I would say, probably the best WBC anybody's had up to this point. Just, I mean, there's a time in baseball, Michael, when you are firing on all cylinders and you're watching the ball and the ball is just traveling so slow and it's the size of a beach ball and you are just you're hitting everything. Like you have to try to swing and miss. And Trey Turner was there. In fact, he's still there. Like every day I'm getting an update that Trey Turner's hit another home run in spring training. Like this guy is just he can't do no wrong. And that was one of the big things for me is into the Dodgers offseason. I was like, don't lose Trey Turner. Lose whoever you want. Don't lose Trey Turner. I know people like to pick on Trey Turner for his defense, which, to be fair, is not nearly the best in the league. There are plenty of shortstops that have better defense than Trey Turner. I will downright say that right now. I could probably think of 10 off the top of my head who just purely have better defense. But in terms of the entire package a baseball player can bring, Trey Turner has it. Speed, power, contact, glove work. I mean, it's not the best, but he is a five-tool player, man. He's the epitome of it, and he is so electric to watch. Watching him turn doubles into triples, singles into doubles, stealing bases, going first to home, second to home. He just adds so much to the team, and I think that is such a great acquisition for the Phillies. I think this team is really going to be something um, going into this season. I'm so excited to see what they can do throughout 162 games.
Yeah, especially I obviously the big loss, but he seems really happy there, and it looks like he's gonna have a lot of success. Totally forgot. Old teammates Bryce Harper's there. I totally forgot that they were on the Nationals together. So it's like, whoa, they're gonna have some fun together. But going back to this bullpen where Craig Kimbrel, I agree. I mean, I was backing up Craig Kimbrel for the longest time before. I really wanted him to see him improve and do good. And it just for me it got to a point where I couldn't rely on it. And I was like, I needed you to do this, and you couldn't. But I think that's gonna help him also, not only with this chip on his shoulder. He does not necessarily have to be the closer because you have Jose Alvarado, Sir Anthony Dominguez, and you have Gregory Soto, who can all and most likely all will share that closer role. Granted,
I
Craig Kimbrel.
I totally forgot about Sir Anthony Dominguez. That dude was an animal in the postseason. Every time he came out, I just knew I was like, all right, it's over. You know, if they had a lead, he was coming out. He was just so dominant in the postseason. A lot of these guys were. I can think of several guys in this bullpen that just came out and churned out innings, more so than we thought the starters were going to. Some of these starters, Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola, weren't perfect throughout the postseason. And you know who was? Their bullpen. Their bullpen was incredible, which is why I thought it was a big hit when they lost Zach Eflin and Robertson was the other one, right?
Yeah.
I thought those were some huge hits to the Phillies bullpen. But looking at this bullpen now, I mean, it's still loaded. It's still loaded. Um, yeah, there's some filler guys in there, but it is still loaded with some good pieces, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's just this pitching staff, besides the exception, because there are some question marks. I think the main question mark of this pitching staff is Bailey Falter. He's listed as their fifth starter right now. Technically will be his first full season, assuming a starting pitching position. And his expected numbers are a 4.25 ERA, but that's obviously pretty good if you're coming in. This is your first season. Those are not bad numbers, especially in a team where you're the 5 and you have guys in front of you that can help you with that. But this team, I just think, is going to blow everyone else right out of the water. Do I think they can win the division? Maybe. You don't know. I mean, the Mets still up here that we haven't mentioned yet. But with their injury concerns that we've been seeing and just them overall being the Mets, we could easily see this Phillies team take first place. And I'm going to let you go first on this one. Their over-under is at 88.5 games.
Over. Right off the bat, over. I love this team, man. They're so electric. Last season, I mean, we saw that, dude. I couldn't wait to watch the Phillies play postseason games. If there was one team I wanted to see watch play postseason games, well, if there were two teams, it was the Phillies and the Mariners. They're just so fun to watch. They're so electric. They're so easy to get behind, dude. It was so fun to see some of these guys playing. JT Realmuto, we got Alec Boehm, Reese Hoskins, Bryson Stott, Edmundo Sosa, and now coming into seeing Trey Turner on this team, Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper when he's healthy, Brandon Marsh. Everybody loved him towards the end of the season. It's such a fun team to get behind, and I really, really cannot wait to see what they can do this season. They should really have a good shot at taking this at this NL title, and if not, they should cement themselves into a wild card spot. Should. We'll see
Okay.
how it goes, but they should have a wild card spot locked up. In fact, in between the top 3 teams of this NL West or NL East, there should be at least a division winner and one locked in spot. And if not, I'm gonna be embarrassed for them. For all 3 of those teams collapsing. I cannot see a world where that happens, but if it does, I will absolutely be dumbfounded. I don't think an NL Central spot should be taking a wild card spot. It should be between the West and the East. It simply should. We've got 3 top dogs over in the NL East, and we have 2 to 3 top dogs in the NL West. So, between division winners and wild card spots should be locked up there, because we have yet to see a really dominant 2 teams come out of the Central in the past few seasons. So I can't imagine that doesn't happen. Now, if it does, somebody embarrass themselves, whether it be the Mets, Braves, or Phillies. Somebody's gonna have to embarrass themselves to not find wild card spots if they don't end up winning the division. You're muted.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Jacob. But I 100% agree. I love this team in every single aspect. And I think they're gonna come in and they're gonna play with this young energy, because this is also a pretty younger team, and that they are not banking, but they are gonna have some guys who are gonna bounce back for them and be amazing. And I think that we're gonna really just see this team shine. And Jacob, next at the 4th ranked team are Los Angeles Dodgers. And before we continue, I want to make a comment, because of course we have already talked about this, so I'm not gonna get into the additions and subtractions here, but this team has been a very question from whether or not they will succeed, just based on the fact of, can they do it without these stars? But Jacob, I want to paint you a picture. This team, and I don't know how the people are gonna react to me saying this. This team reminds me of the 2017 roster. There aren't a lot of superstars that are gonna carry you, but everyone in this lineup will surprise you, and everyone is gonna come out there and do well and perform over 162, which is why I love this team. And I'm not that scared. Even if the Padres do win the division, I think that there's just gonna be all around guys performing day in, day out that we wouldn't expect would at this day and age. And especially from the past seasons a couple of these guys have had. Obviously, you're kind of banking on bounce back seasons from Chris Taylor and Max Muncy, but they've been ranking in recent games in spring training. I was at the game last night. They hit back-to-back Jags. They're amazing. James Outman, a rookie, is going to come up and do some things. He's amazing. He's on fire right now. Like, is he the next coming of Cody Bellinger, a younger, little on the late side center fielder who's just coming in and just doing it for this team? Like, obviously, if they miss playoffs, because that's been a really big question, can they still do it? Would suck not as a Dodger fan, but not only as a Dodger fan, but as a baseball fan. But this team, I feel like, is an underdog team in the sense that people are seriously doubting this team, and I think they shouldn't, because I think this roster is very sneaky and can put some serious points on the board. And I think if everything goes right and everyone performs, this can be a 2017 story. Not with a cheating scandal, but in one we win.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And Michael, let me start off by saying I could probably talk about the Dodgers for hours and hours and hours. There's not enough time in the day for how much I could talk about the Dodgers. I love the franchise, grew up with them, absolutely adore them, follow them every single year. So excited that this season's about to start. I cannot wait. Cannot wait to be watching Dodger baseball during dinner time every night for the foreseeable future. Um, so let's get started, right? This pitching staff is, as always, one of the best in baseball. Whether people want to accept that or not, it is a fact. It is an absolute fact. If you add in the fact that the Dodgers pitching coaches are some of the best in all of baseball, and the fact that they can turn crap into gold is just it's insane, Michael. It is insane the amount of times we've seen pitchers come in with ridiculously awful stats, and we are just thinking, what are they doing? And they turn them into outright studs. Let me tell you, Alex Vesia, Evan Phillips, Caleb Ferguson, Yancy Almonte, Phil Bickford, Adam Kolarek, and now we're adding Alex Reyes to that list of pitchers who have come in with not good stats. Alex Vesia being a prime example. He was utter garbage with the Marlins, and I think that's putting it lightly. He only had a few innings, and I think he had a higher ERA than he had innings. And they just come in and be absolute stars. There is not one person on this list, even Phil Bickford, who has had a not so great season this past year, who I would not trust in a bottom of the ninth, 2 outs, bases loaded situation. All of these guys are absolute studs. I know we don't have our closer right now, but if we take away the injuries, Daniel Hudson, Blake Trinan, Yancy Almonte, Brusdar Graterol, Alex Vesia. You tell me, and Alex Reyes. You tell me you wouldn't trust any one of those 6 guys healthy as a closer? Anyone. Pick them out of a hat. I don't care. You start any, or you have any one of those guys be a closer, and I wouldn't doubt it for a second. I thought a big thing going into the offseason was do not lose your bullpen. And they started to dish out some big bullpen pieces. And I was a little scared. But this bullpen is still as strong as ever. I know we lost Chris Martin. That was my dude. I was praying to every deity out there that that we would not lose Chris Martin, because he was nails at the end of the season. Absolute stud. Just so dominant. Coming in from the Cubs with a 4+ ERA and knocking it down to like a 1.15 or something ridiculous like that. With the Dodgers was just, I mean, you could count on him more than you can count on just about anybody else in that bullpen. And I really didn't want to see him leave. And watching him go to the Boston Red Sox was a tough loss, but we still have a stellar bullpen. I haven't even touched on the starting rotation that, when healthy, features several young up and coming future Cy Young Award winners. Julio Urias is a Cy Young Award winner already. I'm just going to say that right now. He might not have the award, but my goodness, he deserves a Cy Young. Get this man a Cy Young. He has had the best last 3 years of any other pitcher combined. Simply outright. There have been individual pitchers who have had better individual years. Sandy Alcantara last year was just a workhorse. Dude just would not stop. 9 innings, 9 innings, 9 innings every time. Though he had to, because he was on the Marlins. Urias didn't have to be that guy because our bullpen is that good. He just had to go 6 innings and then boom, we're good. He had a 20-win season the other year. Nobody came close to that. I think closest next to him was like 17. He had a 20-win season with a sub-3 ERA and still didn't get one single first place Cy Young vote. Not a single one. That is outrageous to me. In fact, he finished 3rd last season. 3rd. I think to Max Fried.
It was Sandy, Fried, Julio.
That is just astonishing to me, Michael. That just goes to show you how overlooked Urias is. He has been the ace of the Dodgers. He has. And I wanted Walker Buehler to be that guy, but he started out a little rough and then got injured. Still going to be injured for the foreseeable future. Probably not going to make it back this season, which is tough. But he's another future Cy Young Award winner. I know it for a fact. He just will be when he comes back and he's strong. He will be. Dustin May, Tony Gonsolin, Bobby Miller, Gavin Stone. These guys, you are going to see them over and over again in the next few years. They are going to be stars. I know it for a fact. Like you're saying with this roster, it's not too flashy of a roster. We still have Will Smith, one of the best catchers in baseball. Freddie Freeman, the best first baseman in baseball, I would say. Mookie Betts, you're not going to get a better right fielder out there. I know Aaron Judge is better offensively, but as an entire package, including defense, I think Mookie's the best right fielder. You can argue me that all you want. I think he's got the best tools overall. Power, contact, defensive skill, defensive prowess. You can slot him in any position you wanted. If you needed a position field, Mookie will play it. Even first base, you could probably throw him in a catcher, and hell, if you wanted him to pitch, I can probably tell you he would do it. He might not be the best pitcher out there, but I could tell you he could do it. You slot him in wherever you want, he's got it. And you know you're in good hands. Did you see him make some of those plays in the WBC at second base?
I sure did.
That diving stop was that of any of the best second baseman you could throw out there. They would have all made the same play. He is right up there. So you've got a couple of stars, but the rest of these guys, I wouldn't say unproven, but they're not flashy names. They're not names you hear all the time. Max Muncy, Miguel Rojas, Miguel Vargas, Gavin Lux, pray for a speedy recovery. Chris Taylor, David Peralta, Trace Thompson. Like, they're all guys that you probably haven't heard of if you haven't been following the Dodgers too much. Or, that of the Marlins with Miguel Rojas. Jason Hayward, I heard he's making the opening day roster. That's good to see. I hope we can get a little bit out of him. It's not a flashy roster, and like you said, I really think this roster is underrated. I don't think everybody's giving them enough credit. And I agree with you. I think this does feel like a 2017 roster where we're going in with not the flashiest of roster. In fact, saying 2017 Dodgers really takes a hit to me because there's a lot of guys on that team that I loved that I'm not seeing on this Dodger team anymore. But aside from that, we're moving on. It's a great roster. It really is. And I cannot wait any longer to see them start performing this Thursday on opening day.
It's gonna be exciting. But Jacob, you're talking about the young talent. Obviously, there's a bunch of young talent, especially within the pitching rotation. But for those of you who say that Clayton Kershaw's washed, I mean, just go look at his performance last night. 6 shutout innings. against the Angels. And granted, they're the Angels. But he struck out Mike Trout 3 times. And it's Mike Trout. Like, that was just amazing to see that he's still able to pull that off. But, Jacob, I'm going to paint you a picture. Because here is what's going to happen. I'm making a prediction. I'm calling this. This is the best case scenario what happened, Jacob. Everyone's clicking. We're having a good year. But the Padres, of course, are having a good year. They're coming up from behind. Then we get to the dreaded August 2nd. The big bad boy trade deadline. Walker Buehler is making some improvements. He's recovering fast. And going into the postseason, our rotation is Kershaw, Rodriguez, Buehler, Syndergaard, and Ohtani. To win the World Series. I'm calling it right now. Hopefully that happens. Probably not, but one can dream. One can dream.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we all have been trying to address the elephant in the room. That is, there's a reason we are not seeing big moves from Big Daddy GM of the Dodgers, and we feel like that reason is he's gonna go huge this trade deadline, mostly targeting Shohei Ohtani. On the off chance that we can't get Shohei Ohtani, I think we're still going to be seeing a big move. And assuming we haven't found a stud fourth and fifth pitcher in Syndergaard and possibly Gonsolin when he gets back, we're going to see the Dodgers go after a star pitcher. That's what we've seen in past years. When there's a small hole in the rotation, it gets plugged up with a big face. Think of Yu Darvish. Think of Max Scherzer. Think of Trevor Bauer for the little time that we had him. I am convinced that we are very likely going to be targeting a big time pitcher this offseason. God forbid Sandy Alcantara is off the trade table. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there, right? Because there have been who in the world saw Max Scherzer going to the Dodgers with Trey Turner in that? If you're telling me you expected that, if anybody tells me they expected that, you're off your rocker, dude. Because that was out of left field. And I didn't even know that was a possibility. And then it was okay, he's going off to the Padres. I was like, no. And then he was to the Dodgers. I was like, yes. So there are big time pitchers that are on the list, and there are big time pitchers that might be on the list of candidates that we will be targeting this offseason. That is what I'm thinking. That is what I'm expecting. I'm expecting the unexpected because that's what we have to at this point. And we have to understand that we might not get Shohei Ohtani. No matter how much we wanted to save up and cut under the luxury tax threshold, it's a reality that might come true. That being said, we still have a great roster, and if this doesn't happen, I still am very confident in our Dodgers, but I can only imagine from past years it's always a big trade move at the trade deadline, and I think this one is going to be something to remember. I think it's going to be a huge caliber pitcher getting dished towards Dodgers. I don't know what we're going to lose in that trade package. I'm afraid of what we're going to lose in that trade package because I think we have a lot of young talent that could do a lot of good for the Dodgers. But that being said, if a guy like Sandy Alcantara, Corbin Burns, Shohei Ohtani's on the table, how much the Dodgers want to win the World Series this year? I think pretty badly after coming off of this last season. 111 wins and you can't even beat the Padres in the DS? That's embarrassing. Oof. That is embarrassing.
Yeah.
I mean, that'll be just as embarrassing as the Mets spending $500 billion. And if they don't get a World Series win this year, God forbid they even miss the World Series. We're on the same page. We're on the same par. 111 wins. franchise record and you don't even make it out of the DS against the team that you have been pulverizing for the past forever, embarrassing. So I think they're going huge this trade deadline. I know they didn't do much
agree.
this free agency, but I think there was a reason for that. I think that is because we are going to see something big this trade deadline. If you remember this free agency, we saw a lot of minor league contracts get signed. What does that mean to you, Michael? That means a
They're
lot of
looking
trade
for guys.
pieces. That means a lot of trade pieces. That means a lot of guys that they can utilize in packages to where you don't want to get rid of Gavin Stone, get rid of two other semi-decent pitchers that you just picked up on a minor league contract. There was a lot of those guys. Every time I saw an update with the Dodgers, it was signing some unknown minor league guy. That's great. That's great. I know people don't want to see that, but that's great for me because that means more trade pieces. More ability to let them figure their shit out in the minors and build up their trade value in the minors. Maybe throw them up there for a few MLB games, build up the trade value even more, and dish them out. Because right now we're not attached to those guys very emotionally. Gavin Stone, Bobby Miller, I don't want to see go. I really don't. Any of those other guys,
Bye. Respectfully.
if that if it means if it means you can be a part of a giant trade deal like Shohei Ohtani or Sandy Alcantara or Corbin Burns, you know how much an honor that is? Take that for Alex Verdugo and Jeter Downs. They were like, we got traded for Mookie Betts. Like, that's an honor. They see in us some equivalent value that they see in Mookie Betts. That's a win. So I'm looking forward to this year, man. I just cannot wait.
I agree. The over-under is at 96. The highest over-under we do have on this list, which is a big ask, especially with the Padres. But going back to their last 3 seasons where they have had competition from other teams, you have 111, 106, and 106 wins in their for last 3 full seasons. So I think still gonna go with this over in this team, and I think there's a lot of people that are going to say the under, and respectfully so, because of the fact of where they are and where they have been, and where the Padres are. But I just feel like we are still gonna see this team shine in ways that people do not expect.
Okay, Michael, let me give you a little rundown. The least wins we've seen with the Dodgers since Roberts has been a manager is 91. Now we're talking full season, obviously, the 2020 season, 43-17, which is the best win percentage of all the seasons, but obviously short season. 91, 92, 104, 106, 106, 111. They have been powering up every year. I am going to take the over. We have seen time and time again the Dodgers be able to perform with these kids, with the likes of Trace Thompson, with the likes of Seager when he came up, with Bellinger when he came up, Puig, Kike Hernandez, Jock Peterson. We saw them come up. We saw them perform. We know they can. We know that their coaching staff is one of the best in all of baseball, including for the pitchers. We are very likely going to see them perform. They just always do. They always manage to perform. It's astonishing, and it's what I've loved about being a Dodgers fan is I don't like losing. And as a fan, I feel that as well. And I have not had to experience that much in the past few seasons. And I've really enjoyed that. And I think it's going to continue. I think Dave Roberts, as manager, no matter who wants to talk bad about him, he is doing something right with the Dodgers. Whether that be with him being able to be a great manager and manage the egos and bringing in great coaches and pitching coaches and batting coaches and bench coaches and everything, they are doing it right. They just simply are. And while 96.5 is a very, very high line, I think it's rightfully so because that is all we have seen from the Dodgers the past few years. Win after win after win after win. The only division title they didn't take was the year that they lost by 1 game to the Giants. We had 106. They had 107. What are you supposed to do there? You had 106 wins and didn't get the top spot in your division. Shame on you. Should have won more games. Come on. Impeccable stuff from the Dodgers. I take the over, absolutely. I think, am I biased? Yeah, I'm biased as a Dodgers fan, but I'm taking the over.
Yeah. This team, I think, is going to be the hot topic for a lot of this season and a lot of our episodes. But another team that's going to be a hot topic, especially in the month of April, in the month of May, as we start out, the New York Yankees. And I'm going to say it because now that I'm seeing this team and what's been going over in the past couple of weeks, 94.5 games is their over-under. And on paper, if they were all healthy and if they are all clicking, they should be the best team in that division on paper. But with a lot of injuries, Jacob, they've lost over half of their rotation for the foreseeable future. Luis Severino is out. Carlos Rodon is out. Tommy Kahnle in the pen is out. And Frankie Montas is obviously out. I'm going with the under. And not by a lot. I think it's going to be a slight. But I think... and don't forget about your everyday center fielder and Harrison Bader. But I think these injuries, no matter how much these guys can perform, Aaron Judge can't carry a team. He proved that last year. And if he's not clicking and the rest of you guys aren't clicking, where are you guys at as an organization? And I'm going to take the under. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I don't think that's the thing. I think it's going to be slight, but I think this first month is really going to show how much we can truly expect from the Yankees in the long run.
The Yankees, right? Obviously, the big bad wolf, the Patriots of baseball, you might say. They are always competitors. They just are. I can't remember a season the past since I've been a conscious human being that they haven't been a competitive team, at least to some degree, right? Here's what scares me for Yankee fans. You had Aaron Judge being Aaron Judge and breaking records and being the best baseball player during the season. And that is in the same division as a Shohei Ohtani. You got to be doing something right if you're being better than a two-way baseball player. They had the likes of Aaron Judge. They had the likes of Garrett Cole, who's having another standout year. Nestor Cortez, who really, I think, really stood out last year. I think especially, I would say arguably more than Garrett Cole did. And they barely won the division. And I say barely because they went on such, Michael, they were so far ahead of every single other baseball team. So far ahead. And they almost blew it. They lost so many matches towards the end of the season that they almost blew it. They got me thinking that they were going to miss playoffs. Seriously. They had lost so much. And it was ridiculous. It was just as ridiculous as how many games they won in a row to begin the season. They were so over 500. To come even close to losing the pennant, that's terrifying. As a Yankees fan, that is terrifying. Because if you don't have that same start to this season, and you have anywhere near the sort of collapse that you had at last season, you're going to miss playoffs in a division that is so destructive, so high in potential, that the Boston Red Sox, I think, are the last place team in that division, maybe the Orioles. That's a scary division. It really is. And I'm a little nervous for this Yankees ball club, if I'm honest. Spending so much money, spending so much time and energy to save Arson Judge. And I mean, like you said, Aaron Judge can only carry a team so much. And I'm going to be frank with you, Michael. He is the only reason they made playoffs last season. I'm going to tell you that right now. Yankee fans can hate me all they want. He is the only reason they made playoffs last season. If he was not having the year that he had, they would have missed playoffs. I can guarantee you that
Whoa.
because he had so much impact. There
That's
were so
true.
many times where the deciding score was Aaron Judge. Or the score that put them up early that kind of kept the team down the entire time was Aaron Judge. 62 home runs, was it?
62.
That's like every third game. That is
Wow. Oh,
ridiculous.
wow. That's
That is
awesome.
like every third game. That is absurd. And this is in a world where pitching is dominant. Pitching has been dominating the scenes the past few years. Offensive numbers are down to an absurd rate, a rate we've never seen before for a while, since the baseball parks were 500 feet long. It's insane the amount of impact Judge had. And if he has even half the season he had last year, the Yankees really, really have to step it up as a team unit to even come close to making playoffs.
I agree. I gotta give congrats to, and this is gonna be a concern point for me as I continue talking about this. Anthony Volpe, obviously he made the big roster for this year. Congrats to him. Hopefully he can put out a good year. But if you're looking at a lot of this lineup, I know some Yankee fans that were not happy with some of these guys. And Josh Donaldson, who has had a good spring training, Gleyber Torres and Aaron Hicks, who are always a question for you, and of course Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, who Yankee fans have not been kind to a lot in his stint there. And these are guys that are now with these injuries are going to have to not already step it up and bounce back from last year, but are going to have to even take it to another level. Because if you have this offense that's out there and doing great and popping off, you're gonna be fine if you guys give up more runs than you usually would. But if they're not clicking and you're giving them more runs than you should, this team we can see a lot more losses than wins in a short month span. Which is why I've said that, and I'm gonna take this under because I just think this first month will tell us a lot about where we can see this Yankees team at the end of September. The over underline for you, Jacob, is 94.5 games. Where do you see this team falling?
Yeah, I'm gonna take the under. And again, I might get hate from that from Yankees fans, but I am not convinced that they're able to put together a team showing. There, time and time again, I would be watching the Yankees, and it was just Aaron Judge carrying the offense. Granted, the pitchers were great last season for the Yankees. Um, they were outstanding. In fact, that's one of the big points of why they were so good last season. Pitching was great, and the offense, aka Aaron Judge, was great. Um, Now, not saying by any means that this is a one-dimensional team that can only win because of Aaron Judge. What I'm saying is they need to prove to everybody else that everybody else on that team can show up, and even at some degree level that Aaron Judge shows up. And if they can do that, then they will go over. But I am going to have to take the under.
I agree, and we're gonna stay in New York for number 2. The Metropolitans have had a crazy offseason. We've talked about this a lot, and we've already mentioned when we talked about the Mets. We are obviously taking the over for this team. We've already talked about that, and the official line, we've talked about this as well, is 94.5. Now, granted, that was before guys like Jose Quintana, and some of these guys were going down. Brandon Nimmo obviously hoping that he can bring it back up for a little bit and just get healthy overall. But this team fixed what they needed to fix. And obviously, I almost forgot. Prayers to Edwin Diaz. There are still hopes that they can come back. But that's a huge blow because now you're relying on Adam Ottavino and David Robertson still clicking. I think this team is still going to succeed. And on paper that they should win. They should win the division. And if they do, and if they don't, what are you doing? I mean, just seriously. Like, is this Jacob? If this is a spot where this team doesn't win the division or come close to the World Series, Like, I feel like even as a Dodgers fan, they need Shohei Ohtani. Like, what else does this team need to succeed? Because they have one of the best lineups in baseball, one of the best pitching staffs in baseball, whether it is the bullpen and or the rotation. This team needs to perform, and they need to do it now. Because I just don't think there's any excuses for them this year. Just the point blank isn't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I agree. First of all, I would say they do have the best roster in baseball. In terms of position players, I think they do. Um, uh, Omar Narvaez, he's the new kid on block, right? Or am I wrong with that?
Francisco Alvarez is their
Francisco
as
Alvarez.
their rookie catcher, who was actually, I was surprised because they had a little bit of a catching situation. He was optioned to AAA
Yeah,
because they brought
that's
in,
I
yeah,
thought he was going to be starting.
same.
I
And
thought he
then
was going to be the dude,
and
which
then they, yeah,
yeah,
it was
that's
just
interesting.
crazy. Cause
So, but if we're talking about rosters, I mean, as a full-fledged roster, I think they have one of the best, if not the best, lineup in baseball. Um, I think that's simple. Here's where I'm nervous about the Mets, although this might not become such a big issue, is their bullpen. I'm seeing a couple of good names. Adam Ottavino, David Robertson, great pickup. Um, Brooks Raley. That kind of ends the list of like big names. And we're talking in a lineup that Edwin Diaz injured himself in a celebration for Puerto Rico and is out. That is such a blow because you figure, right? You figure you have four of the best starting pitchers you can possibly put together um in baseball right now. In Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander as the old dogs, but they are getting better with age. Those two dudes are just studs. Health is a little bit of an issue for Max Scherzer, but Justin Verlander is looking like the best form of himself ever. Jose Quintana and Kodai Senga coming up as two sick third and fourth arms. All you have to do as a bullpen is put together three, maybe 2 innings of work. And with your closer, if you had a closer that you can count on, that's 2 to 1 innings that you need to really matter about for a bullpen. But now without a closer, you're looking at that 2 to 3 innings, right? That's a big jump. We're talking about every day here, everyday guys. And with Adam Ottavino, Robertson, and Rayleigh, if they're going back-to-back days, they're going to need a day off. And at some point, the penny's going to drop. And I think their big Achilles heel right now is their bullpen, especially with Edwin Diaz going out. Now, that could not come into play. Their offense can carry them. And it'll get to a point where it wouldn't matter. But right now, the holes that I see in this Met staff is the bullpen.
I do agree. I'm looking at their Fangraphs pages, and so a lot of them are expected for not that great of a season. So does this? I think I'm gonna stick, but does this change your mind about their over under? Their over under line is at 94.5. Do you think you might want to switch to the under, or you're gonna stick with the over?
No, I'm going to stick with the over, and I'm going to say that purely based off of the amount of money that they spent this offseason. I think that Steve Cohen is going to light a fire under everyone's ass and say, I didn't spend $700 billion for nothing. You guys better perform, or someone's getting the axe. Um, and okay, there's levels of collapse here, right? If they miss the World Series, that is a loss. Straight up and down, that is a loss for them. Simply is. If they miss a deep run at playoffs, if they go out in the division series earlier, that is an embarrassment. Just like the Dodgers last year, that would be an utter embarrassment. And if they miss playoffs,
Dude, don't even say that. They can't. They
if they miss
they
playoffs, Michael,
they can't.
I would liquidate everything and start over. Simple as that, Michael.
Yeah.
You have spent way too much money to miss playoffs. So if you, as the Mets, collapse so horrifically that you miss playoffs, now I'm not saying get in the wild card spot because we've got some two stellar teams in their division that could very well steal this title spot away from them. So if they miss out on that, whatever. If they miss playoffs, there better be a riot in New York City. I'm just gonna say that right now.
Yeah.
There is no zero excuse to miss playoffs with so much money being spent for your future. Absolutely no reason you should be missing playoffs. This guy was buying MLB players like kids spend $100 in a candy store. I want that one. I want that one. I want that one. I want that one. Give me a little bit of that. I want some of that. Everything, every free agent was on the table for Steve Cohen, and he got like half of them. And so if they miss playoffs, scrap everything. Wipe the board clean, start over. It was a bust, whatever. Start from the beginning. Everything's up from here. Because there's no possible there's no way that they can miss playoffs. It's unacceptable. I think for all five of these top teams, it's unacceptable missing playoffs, and especially so for the Mets, simply because of how
Because
much
of how
money they
much they
spent.
spent.
Absolutely.
Speaking of a team, the number one team, obviously, who did not need to spend money, but oh boy, did they spend a little bit of money, Jacob? Your 2022 World Series champions, that pains me to say, because we know who they are. The Houston Astros. They've had just an utter dominant couple seasons, even if you do go back to the pitching scandal. I mean, the cheating scandal, well, whatever. But um, they've just they got better even though they didn't need to. You think you're gonna lose Justin Verlander, Yuli Gurriel, Christian Vasquez, Will Smith, the pitcher, and still be as dominant? And then, granted, they were still gonna be dominant, but you thought they were gonna get better, Jacob? Jacob, they got better. They added Jose Abreu to be their first baseman. Jose Abreu, who almost won the batting title last year, Jacob. And they still have a lineup of, just your everyday Alex Bregman, Jeremy Pena, Jose Altuve, Jordan Alvarez, Michael Brantley, Kyle Tucker, and Chas McCormick. I mean, granted, Chas McCormick, you're kind of hoping for more of a breakout season. Same thing with your catcher, Martin Maldonado, is not going to give you the all-star numbers you want. But this team is just utter dominance at whatever you tell them to do. Even in their bullpen, Jacob, Ryan Presley, Rafael Montero, Brian Abreu, Hector Neris, Ryan Stanek, Phil Maton. It's just dude after dude who is going to perform. Like, I feel like just looking and talking about, seeing every time I talk about the Astros, I'm like, oh yeah, they're going to go to the championship series. Like, that's a lock for them. Like, it's almost at the point where it's like, oh yeah, they're gonna go to the World Series. At that point, that's where this team is at, and this team is so good. Granted, there is gonna be a little bit of a question mark with the starting rotation. Obviously, Verlander's gone. They're gonna rely a lot on Valdez and Javier coming out. They need bounce back years from Garcia, Urquidy, and McCullers. Hunter Brown, he's already been getting comparisons to Justin Verlander himself. He's got some Rookie of the Year votes already. People are saying their over underline, Jacob, is 95.5, the second highest behind the Dodgers. I'm gonna go with the over, but it's a slight over because of the fact that, but not only did they get better, but the Mariners, Angels, and Rangers all got better on paper.
Yeah, I agree. I'm gonna take the over for these boys. Now I will say you lost a lot of impact in Yuri Gurriel and Justin Verlander. That being said, this roster is as full as can be. I mean, one of the best put together rosters of all in baseball. You got a starting rotation that really isn't missing anything. Framber Valdez, Jose Urquidy, Lance McCullers Jr., Luis Garcia, Christian Javier. That's your fifth arm, Christian Javier. Your bullpen, just like you talked about, nails. Absolute nails. And adding Rafael Montero, ugh, that's disgusting. And one of the best put together lineups. You know, I said the Mets lineup is the best. I might have misspoke. This lineup might be the best. And that's including the addition of Mauricio Dubon, who can slot in anywhere. If somebody needs a day off, if Jose Altuve, Jeremy Pena, that stud needs a day off, you could slot him in the third base, in outfield, wherever.
Have you seen his pictures of entering spring training? That man is jacked.
Dude, he is the next star, man. He should be the face of the Astros for the foreseeable future. If I'm the
Absolutely.
Astros, I am putting that guy's face on a shirt and selling it to everybody because he is that guy and he showed up when it mattered. The postseason, the World Series. I think it was his rookie year and he won World Series MVP.
Yeah.
Who does that? Who does that? Absurd, man. Just crazy. Crazy stuff. Like like I said, put that guy's face on a shirt and sell it. Everybody's gonna buy it because he's just such a lovable dude too. He's so down to earth. He's such a likable dude. Like I want to hate the Astros less just because of Jeremy Pena. Like that's what I was telling my dad watching the postseason. I was like, man, I hate the Astros, but God, I hope Jeremy Pena
is the
wins.
dude.
Just him and Dusty Baker. But I mean, I want to hate this team so bad just because of the bad taste in my mouth that's from several years ago. But it's hard to do, man. I'm glad that they've got rid of most of those players, which I think breaking up that team does better for me, just to be able to root for these guys. But it's a sick lineup, man. I'm gonna take the over too. I think it's not that much of an over because, like you said, a lot of these teams got better in their division, got a lot better. Looking at the Mariners, Rangers, and Angels, who should all be contending for that top spot. But we'll see. I would take the over.
Yep. World Series prediction for me. Dodgers Mets. I think it's just, I mean whoa, sorry. I misspoke. Dodgers Astros, sorry. That's just where I think this is gonna go. And boy, I think this is gonna be a great season. What about you, Jacob, to end it? Your World Series prediction.
I am gonna say it's going to be Dodgers Mariners.
Whoa, I like that. Whoa! I would
Okay?
love that.
I think the Mariners have all the momentum in the world. And they have no reason to bottom out this season. They've made great additions. They've come together as a team. They figured out that they can do it because they performed in the playoffs and they beat the Blue Jays that nobody thought they would beat. Um, I can see it happening. Now, obviously, I'm biased in saying the Dodgers, but I do think they have a great team and they can absolutely do it. Um, but I think maybe the Mariners are gonna turn some heads and shock the world. Absolutely. Calling it right now. Dodgers 3-1 over Mariners this season
Whoa,
for the World Series.
let's see that. Let's hope. One can hope. That concludes our Power Rankings. Thank you for joining us on this preseason journey. Tomorrow is opening day. It's finally arrived. Early in the morning, we will be releasing our opening day preview and our award picks for the year. I am Michael Reg with my good friend Jacob Payne and co-host. Let's get into this 2023 season.